Hello, dear learners. First of all, I welcome you all to Unit 29, which is Social Media and Self-Representation. In Module 11, Digital Culture and Gender of this MOOC, we have learned about social media and how it is used as a medium of representation. This unit will apprise you on the idea of representation as well as acquaint you with the various images and narratives that social media carries for every individual and different factors. The main objectives of this module will be to determine the features of social media, understand how it represents self and establishes the identity, understand the process of actualization and self-representation in media. Now, before that, we'll start with the evolution of social media, which is a brief overview. The internet, of course, we know was an outcome of military research, which was to foster connectivity and implement different kinds of development. But in course of time, it became an academic discourse, and it took up various marketing forms in the present form. The computing systems developed social connections and created a much developed social structure. There were emergence of different platforms. We began with the development of blogs and journals in the broad area of connectivity. Of course, we do remember the importance of platforms which evolved over the course of time, like the 6 Degrees in 1997, the Friendster in 2002, MySpace, Orkut. All these led to the creation of profiles, connect friends, marked the beginning of online social networks. Of course, this increasing element of connectivity also led to some sort of capitalization of relationships, and a capitalist social network was evolved thereby. There was a rise in popularity. There were, in the mid-2000s, saw a subsequent rise of more popular tech-savvy platforms which were multimedia, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, which developed, and they developed features where people, the users, engaged, interacted, created or enhanced the content that they had generated. It saw facelift with the intrusion of the smartphones. Now smartphones, we see everybody has a smartphone today. So the network has now shifted in the user's hands with the advent of smartphone. Technologies like live streaming, video conferencing, remote working has led to this unending involvement of social media, and this algorithm has entered into everyday life. Now when we talk about algorithm, let me start by talking about what is algorithm, because in order to generate more engagement, it has become essential to determine who the users are. The companies are using social media because they want to engage users. They want to create awareness, generate some sort of idea about what the user identity or persona is. Understanding the user persona, the content is created and algorithms are being created for the content so that each user sees a content which suits his from very long videos, the content is now tailored into short videos like the Insta Reels, TikTok videos, and these are shown to people on the basis of algorithm, on the basis of the preferences. This also raised questions, of course, on privacy and led to emphasis on security. Now, we know that today we have the artificial intelligence coming in. Very soon there might be more talk about virtual reality and augmented reality, which creates room for immersive social experience, and this will largely impact how the communication takes place. In the midst of all this, it is actually very important for us to know how social media, how this very diverse form of multimedia communication is being used to represent ourselves. Now we talk about the role of social media in self-representation. Social media plays a very crucial role as to how individuals can represent themselves. Plays a crucial role in self-representation online. There are a lot of curated contents, user-driven contents. Here we'd like to highlight certain things like first, in terms of representation, we'll talk about curated online personas. We are all different individuals and each individual has different interests, liking, different kinds of engagement with different contents. So nowadays social media platforms work on creating curated content because based on every user persona, they create a sort of curated content so that it kind of represents who his individual image is trying to work on. So in social media, it is more like a participatory communication. The individuals see content which suits their interests and social media creates content which suits the individual interests. So simultaneously, it becomes a circular process. This is the outcome of self-representation in a digital age. Secondly, self-expression. Every individual expresses through social media. Now they adhere to content which suits their interests, like we've already talked about content creation. Now self-expression is very important because now we know that we are members of different communities. When there are different communities which have similar interests, people become members of certain communities. People become members of communities where a large number of people are talking about one common interest topic, and then they start understanding that these are the social or personal narratives that are contributing to richer self-representation. The third is validation validation and gratification. The people on the virtual front are today more inclined towards validation. People want likes, people want shares, people want them to be viewed, people want them to be seen and become visible. The live videos, the content that people generate through text or videos, everything is all related to self-expression, deciding how they choose themselves or choose to represent themselves online. Reinforcing identity. There are multiple identities and likeness towards some beliefs, practices. In no time of history did we see individuals understanding that they are a person who's located into the remote area of the world and they are actually talking about a common interest or common topic. There are so many reinforcement of a user persona, user personality. Of course, with this, the next point arises, which is concerns about authenticity. In such modes of self-expression, it raises concern about authenticity. Are people actually trying to ape somebody, or is it really their own self? Psychological effects. In this quest for self-expression, there are times when a psychological health can take a backseat, leading to anxiety and stress. This mostly happens in terms of self-representation. People feel left out. There are terms which are used generally like FOMO, fear of missing out, or validation, self-esteem. These are all related to how people present themselves, how people respond to how people present themselves on the internet or the digital media. Social media narratives, actualization, representation in social media. Now we move on to the next topic, which is about social media narratives, actualization and representation. Self-actualization is essentially how individual, particularly women, who use social media as a means of self-expression or gender goals. As we know today, many genders do not find way to express themselves. So it is social media through which they use the medium to self-actualize. There are different, groups which are gender, talking about gender issues. Maybe it deals transgender or women or any other gender which does not fall into the broad categories of male, female. So in that case, people talk about gender identity and actualization through these digital mediums. Social media serves as a platform. It becomes a sharing platform from self-actualization, where I understand that there are people who share such kind of common identities. Now, while we're talking about this, we also have to talk about certain things, that how does it lead to self-actualization? Firstly, it leads to engagement with content. There are significant studies which have been conducted where they understand that the content or balancing personal goal or social interactions are very crucial. Now, every individual, every gender, women especially, have certain ways of self-expression. It may be through art, or it may be navigating through any kind of narratives, writing. Such kind of social media platforms give them the opportunity for developing the complexities of self-actualization. While they seek to express themselves, they also face challenges. Sometimes there are challenges like social embarrassment, where most people who are mostly into social media, they understand that there are certain social norms that they have to follow. This is also one of the byproducts, too much of involvement into the digital media. Next is understanding audience-centric communication. Audience-centric communication is a strategic approach that focuses on understanding and engaging the audience effectively. Here are some of the key points which we feel that audience want some sort of attention. They're competing for attention in platforms like TikTok and Instagram. People are also looking for involvement and kind of community building through constant updates, and they are also trying to find their entertainment communities like in Netflix. They also have common views. The algorithms also work in Netflix, Amazon Prime and other social OTT platforms also. This highlights the need for institutions to stand out and most importantly, understand how different genders accept the content, generate content, and what is the kind of connectivity that they are looking for in terms of actualization. Next is building relationship. In self-actualization, it's very crucial to us to understand that there's a sense of building relationship. The core of audience-centric communication is about building relationship. By prioritizing the audience needs and preferences, institutions can become brands that resonate with prospective students or maybe prospective audiences. It needs to understand that institutions have a big role in trying to bring everybody together using these platforms, which are common mediums of self-expression. This also helps in self-actualization. Next is inspiration and reinforcement for people who are already practicing audience-centric communication. It's a reminder that every institution or every organization should now understand that audience-centric communication, audience-centric content is mostly used to increase the engagement of the people, because the current attention span is very less, and if the kind of content that is generated does not suit the interest, people tend to deviate, they tend to move out. So Next, we move on to sociological, theoretical, and psychological perspective. There are different theories which have come up on self-representation. Self-representation and actualization is rooted in sociological and psychological theories of identity. A number of theoretical aspects have been taken into consideration, but we'd like to talk about Goffman's dramaturgical approach, which was done in 1959. Of course, this was done in 1959, but we can still relate with the intrusion of social media. Self-representation, as conceptualized by Goffman, deals about performances where individuals create and manage the impression with that of the public. This was basically studied in terms of how people had image management issues or image management, how they dealt with political parties, political leaders, any kind of public figures. They have to manage their impressions with the kind of impression that goes out with the public. In the current context, this is relevant with the application of social media. It provides a platform, it gives them the medium of self-expression and eventually leads to content curation. Right now, Goffman is relevant mostly because of social media, because what he has spoken about impressions and public image, this is relevant in terms of current times. Goffman, who had spoken about how image building or impressions are important as how people deal with themselves in public, with the intrusion of social media, we've understood that this is much more significant because it gives them the medium of self-expression, eventually leads them to content curation and building their own persona which suits their interest. Another prominent sociologist, David Snow, had again written extensively about social movements and how women or other genders represent themselves in such social movements. The history has seen a number of social movements taking place. People participate from different globes. Maybe it is to end the war, or maybe it is for any kind of climate issue. But when we talk about social media and its intrusion, we've seen that it has become, participating in such movements have become part of personal branding. People represent themselves because when a particular person whom we think that he has this particular personality or he has this particular persona, if he goes ahead and supports a movement that suits his personality, we do understand that it adds more to his personal branding. It adds value to the movement as well as adds value to the person concerned. This is part of today. If we apply David Snowman, we can understand how people curate their area of interest and try and mobilize support. This is precisely a two-way process. There are a number of other theoretical and sociological frameworks which have been taken up, where we understand that social movements also adopt similar narratives. They also try to attract people, relevant people, and mobilize them and engage them in different forums. Lastly, towards the end, we come to psychological and societal implications. Now, we do understand that social media gives a room for self-representation and self-actualization, but it has also profound psychological and sociological impacts, both positive as well as negative. The advantages of self-expression, firstly, we can see that, in terms of marginalized communities, maybe different genders or different people from different, stratas of life, they find that these social media provides opportunities for self-actualization and expression, which otherwise it would have been difficult for them to express themselves. Secondly, it also leads to networking and professional growth. There's so much of issues which are being spoken by people across the globe. People, experts from one corner to another corner can actually come together and talk about issues of areas of common interest. For example, if we talk about climate change, this is one topic which affects everyone in the world, and a climate in one particular region also has a significant impact on climate on another region. So it's social media, through self-representation, people can help themselves in network. Again, it also helps in professional growth, like websites like LinkedIn, X, which was formerly known as Twitter. These helps people to connect with people on a professional level. There are a lot of people who update their profiles. They tell them exactly where they are working, what is their area of interest. This provides room for networking. Now, the third advantage is community building. We know that self-actualization actually leads to community building. These community work as pressure group. For example, if a organization is working against use of nuclear power, a lot of community people who believe in such kind of interests, where people who are more empathetic towards the world and its and global peace, they can all come together. It leads to community building. In terms of gender, actually, it really works significantly because gender issues are more addressed in terms of in social media today. Issues that were not being spoken about, they are actually spoken about extensively through social media, about transgender issues, binary genders. All these genders have now a common forum. They have a community, and these work as pressure groups. For example, we see how this worked in the US. All the genders came together, worked as a pressure group, and went against the policies which were detrimental for their interest. So we do see that there are community. This works for self-representation in the broader sense, and it leads to not just self-representation, it leads to imposing their own rights. Now, disadvantages, of course, everything has two sides of the same coin. Disadvantages, if we talk about, it leads to stereotyping. Sometimes, of course, from print we've moved to television, and from television we've moved to social media. In gender, we often see that even in social media there's a lot of risk of stereotyping. For example, how a person puts up a profile picture, it represents how people should look or people should adhere to. So that kind of pressure actually works in their social media, and this self-actualization and self-representation sometimes falls into the categories of stereotyping. It becomes individuals fall into the trap of molding themselves into a standard form. So this stereotyping is one of the disadvantages. Next is stress and anxiety. We've seen that social media or any kind of digital forums have become a mode through which people express themselves extensively. Everybody's trying to generate content. Everybody's trying to create a kind of a world where they look good, they sound perfect, they are doing the perfect things. So it creates a kind of stress and anxiety among people that they need to fit in and maintain the curated content online, which leads to unprecedented pressure. There's a lot of pressure among people when they feel that their self-representation needs to be framed in a particular category. It leads to pressure, and subsequently it leads to health concerns, image-related issues. We've seen that in the last couple of years there have been a number of instances where people health has severely suffered because of the pressure that was put up by trolls. We have unhealthy amount of trolling which is being done in social media. In self-actualization too, people sometimes get defeated because there's too much of attention which is given to something which is put up on the net. So that leads to health concern. Comparison culture. Another thing that has started today very much is the comparison culture. Exposure to idealized representation fosters unrealistic self-expression. There are stories where a person has made really big and how a person is extensively traveling, eating good, doing well. All these leads to comparison culture among different representation. Gender falls into this trap because people expect a person from a particular gender to be able to do this. It could be both male, female, transgender, any kind of gender. Everybody has some sort of expectation and some sort of representation. This actually is not very idealized. Next is privacy concern. Of course, when everything is on the social web today, there's a very broad line that categorizes between safe and unsafe, but there's a very thin line where we do not know where the security is being breached. The public and private spheres raise ethical questions regarding data, identity, security. All the data that I have about myself or anybody for that matter is all on the web. It's very easy for accessing. So there's a lot of privacy concern. A lot of online frauds are being committed because of kind of too much of self-expression online. So this is actually one of the difficulties of self-representation. So with this, we'd like to conclude today's unit. But before that, I'd like to come to the concluding points. Self-representation on social media involves a very complicated interplay of personal identity, societal influence, and technological capacities. While these platforms allow people to create and manage their own identities, they also raise questions about authenticity, privacy, and psychological well-being. Understanding the subtleties of digital self-representation or actualization is essential for navigating social media in a thoughtful and educated manner. Of course, in the next unit, we'll meet again with another interesting module. But before that, I'd like to conclude that self-actualization and representation are, as beneficiary, but also has its associated risk. And we do understand that there are a lot of theoretical and sociological theories which have been conducted, and this actually provides us with a lot of interesting areas for research and study. With this, I'd like to wind up. Till then, bye.